Deep in the misty Blue Ridge Mountains, where secrets cling to ancient trees like morning fog, 7-year-old Noah survived alone in his mother's cabin. The townspeople called him the Ghost Child, a wild boy who spoke to the forest and set clever traps for rabbits. They left food on the porch, but rarely caught glimpses of his small, dirt-smudged face peering from behind curtains. Sheriff Miller checked on him weekly, but Noah always insisted on staying put. "She's coming back," he'd say with unwavering certainty. "I promised to watch our home." One stormy evening, Noah followed a strange sound to a ravine where he found her, a wounded woman with familiar eyes and a scent that made his heart remember. Could this stranger truly be connected to the mother who vanished without a trace? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun filtered through pine branches, casting dappled light across the wooden floor of the small cabin. Noah rose with the birds, as he had every day since she left. His small frame moved with practiced efficiency. There was no time for lingering. Under warm blankets, when you lived alone in the mountains, he splashed cold water on his face from the basin he'd filled the night before. The mirror above showed a boy with eyes too old for his 7 years, dirt smudged across one cheek, and hair that hadn't seen scissors in months. He touched the silver locket hanging around his neck, pressing it briefly to his lips before tucking it safely under his threadbare t-shirt. "Morning, Mama," he whispered to the empty room. Day 342. The cabin was a simple 2-room structure his grandfather had built decades ago, a main room with a wood stove, table and his mother's bed, and a small side room where Noah slept. Everything remained exactly as his mother had left it. Her hairbrush on the nightstand, her boots by the door, her jacket hanging on the peg. Noah refused to move anything, convinced that disturbing her things might somehow prevent her return. Sheriff Miller's words echoed in his head from the last visit. "Son, perhaps it's time to consider—" "She's coming back," Noah had interrupted firmly. "She promised she would never leave me for good." The boy now moved to the small kitchen area, where he stood on a wooden crate to reach the higher shelves. The food supplies the townspeople left on his porch every few days were dwindling. He would need to check his traps soon. His mother had taught him to hunt small game when he was barely 5, a skill that had kept him alive these past 11 months. Outside, mist clung to the trees surrounding the clearing. Noah carried his water bucket down the well-worn path to the creek. The mountain air filled his lungs, crisp and clean. This was the time of day he felt closest to his mother. She had loved early mornings, often waking him to watch the sunrise from the ridge behind their home. "Remember, Noah," she'd told him once, "the mountains have secrets they only share with those who listen carefully." He listened now, letting the sounds of the forest wrap around him, the chickadees calling, the creek babbling over rocks, the rustle of something small moving through underbrush. At the creek's edge, he knelt and dipped his bucket. His reflection stared back, wavering in the current. Sometimes he thought he saw her face instead of his own. They had the same eyes. Everyone said so. Back at the cabin, Noah marked another X on the calendar his mother had made. He'd continued her practice, even using the same red crayon to maintain the pattern. The carefully drawn X's marched across days, weeks, months, a testament to his determination and hope. By mid-morning, he'd checked 3 rabbit traps. 2 were empty, but the third held a decent-sized rabbit. He whispered thanks to the animal as his mother had taught him, before carrying it home for cleaning. Nothing was wasted. The meat would be dinner. The fur would join others being cured for winter. The bones would become tools. Sheriff Miller's truck rumbled up the dirt road around noon, right on schedule. Noah watched from the window as the tall man in the worn brown uniform emerged, carrying a small box. "Morning, Noah," the sheriff called, setting the package on the porch. "Mrs. Abernathy at the general store sent some bread and jam. Said you were looking too thin last time she caught a glimpse of you." Noah opened the door, but stayed in the threshold. "Thank you, sir." Sheriff Miller removed his hat, revealing gray hair cropped short. His weathered face carried concern in every line. "Mind if I come in for a minute? Just to check things are all right?" Noah stepped aside reluctantly. The sheriff was the only person he allowed inside. The man had been kind during the initial search, had fought to let Noah stay in the cabin when others wanted to place him with a family in town. "Caught a rabbit," Noah said, pointing to where he'd hung it to cure. "Good work." The sheriff nodded approvingly. "You're doing well, son, but winter's coming again. The nights get mighty cold up here. We have plenty of firewood. I've been stacking it just like Mama showed me." The sheriff sighed, settling into a chair that creaked under his weight. "Noah, it's been almost a year. The department has officially closed your mother's case. There's no evidence of foul play, but after the flash flood that night—" He paused. "Sometimes the mountains take people." Noah's jaw tightened. "She knows these mountains better than anybody. She wouldn't get taken by them." Sheriff Miller studied the boy's determined face. "Mrs. Wilson in town still wants to take you in. She makes a fine apple pie and her house is right by the school. I need to be here when Mama comes back," Noah answered. The same response he'd given weekly for months. After the sheriff left, Noah sat on the porch whittling a new trap trigger. The forest stretched before him, vast and secretive. Sometimes he imagined his mother was just beyond his vision, watching over him from behind the ancient trees. As evening approached, he prepared a simple stew with rabbit meat and wild onions. He set 2 places at the table as he did every night. One bowl remained untouched, but its presence comforted him. Before darkness fell, Noah walked to the ridge behind the cabin. This was his nightly ritual, to look out over the valley and speak to his mother wherever she might be. "I'm still here, Mama," he said to the wind. "I'm keeping my promise to watch over our home. But please hurry back. The leaves are turning again, just like when you left." He opened the locket around his neck. Inside was a small photograph of a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, eyes that mirrored his own. Noah touched the image with a careful finger. "Good night, Mama," he whispered, closing the locket gently. "I'll be waiting tomorrow too." The afternoon sky darkened with approaching clouds as Noah followed deer tracks through the underbrush. He moved silently, a skill his mother had taught him during their forest lessons. His small fingers traced the impression of hooves in soft earth, calculating how recently the animal had passed. "Always step where they step," his mother's voice echoed in his memory. The deer know the quietest paths. Noah's collection bag already held wild mushrooms and late-season berries. He'd need to reach the ravine and check his snares before the storm hit. The wind shifted, bringing the scent of rain and something else, something wrong. He froze, listening. The forest had gone quiet. No birdsong, no squirrel chatter. Then he heard it, a faint sound carried on the breeze. A groan, distinctly human. Noah crouched instinctively, making himself small. His mother had drilled caution into him about strangers. But the sound came again, weaker this time. A call for help. He removed the small hunting knife from his belt, another of his mother's lessons. Never approach danger unarmed, Noah. Better cautious than caught. Following the sound, he crept toward the ravine where spring runoff had carved a steep gully through the mountainside. The rain began as he reached the edge, fat, heavy drops that quickly soaked through his jacket. Below, through the curtain of water, he spotted disturbed earth and broken branches. A recent landslide. Then he saw her, a woman half buried beneath fallen debris, her leg bent at an unnatural angle. Her clothing was torn and muddied, dark hair plastered against pale skin, blood mixed with rainwater on her forehead. "Hello?" Noah called, keeping a safe distance. "Are you hurt?" The woman's eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "Help," she managed, her voice barely audible over the increasing rainfall. "Please." Noah studied the ravine slope, looking for a safe path down. He'd played in these woods all his life, knew every dangerous spot, every secure foothold. Even so, the descent was treacherous with rain, making the ground slick. He reached her side, knife still gripped tightly. The woman didn't look threatening. Her breathing was shallow, her skin ashen. A hiking boot was visible on one foot. The other leg disappeared beneath fallen branches and mud. "I'll help you," Noah said, "but you need to stay still." He worked methodically, removing debris piece by piece. His mother had taught him basic first aid for emergencies in the isolated mountains. As he cleared away the last branch covering her leg, Noah winced at the sight of blood soaking through her hiking pants. "It might be broken," he said. "I can make a splint, but you'll need a doctor." The woman nodded weakly, struggling to focus on his face. "Thank you," she whispered. "What's your name?" "Noah," he answered, still cautious. "What's yours?" She opened her mouth to respond, then frowned. Confusion crossed her face. I don't remember." Her hand moved to her head, finding the source of the blood. "I can't remember." Noah's wariness increased, but he couldn't leave an injured person in the storm. He removed his jacket, placing it carefully over the woman to keep her warm while he gathered straight branches for a splint. As he worked, the rain intensified. Lightning cracked nearby, illuminating the scene in harsh white light. Noah glimpsed something metallic near where the woman had fallen. A compass, its glass face cracked, the needle spinning uselessly. While binding the splint with strips torn from his collection bag, Noah leaned closer to the woman. Something made him pause, a scent beneath the mud and blood, something hauntingly familiar. He inhaled deeply, his heart suddenly racing. It was faint but unmistakable, the lavender and pine smell of his mother's homemade soap, the same scent that lingered in her clothes, in her pillowcase, in his memories. His hands trembled as he finished securing the splint. The woman's eyes had closed again, her breathing uneven. Noah studied her face, really looking for the first time. The curve of her jaw, the shape of her nose, beneath the dirt and blood, and years he hadn't accounted for, could it possibly be? "Ma'am," he said urgently, shaking her shoulder gently. "Ma'am, wake up." Her eyes opened, struggling to focus. Noah's voice caught in his throat. Do you know me?" The confusion in her eyes deepened, then filled with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Everything's blank." Noah opened the locket around his neck with trembling fingers, holding it close to her face so she could see the photograph inside. "Is this you?" he asked, voice breaking. "Are you my mother?" The woman squinted at the tiny photograph, her expression lost. "I don't know," she said, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "I don't know who I am." But Noah knew that scent, had fallen asleep breathing it every night of his life, until she disappeared. His chest tightened with a wild, dangerous hope. "You smell like my lost mom," he whispered, tears blurring his vision. Lightning flashed again, followed immediately by booming thunder. The storm was directly overhead now. Noah looked up at the steep ravine walls, then back to the injured woman. Getting her out alone would be impossible. "I need to get help," he said. "But I'll mark the trail so I can find you again." Fear crossed the woman's face. "Don't leave me." Noah hesitated, then removed the compass from his pocket, the mate to the broken one he'd found. His mother had given him this compass on his 6th birthday. "Take this," he said, pressing it into her palm. "I'll come back." "I promise." She clutched it weakly. "Noah." She repeated his name, as if trying to memorize it. As he climbed back up the ravine, Noah's mind raced with possibilities. The woman might not remember, but he knew that scent. After all this time, could he have found her? The rain had softened to a gentle patter when Noah returned to the ravine with help, not from town, but from the forest itself. He'd fashioned a crude stretcher from fallen branches and deer hide he'd been tanning behind his cabin. The contraption looked primitive, but had surprising strength, another of his mother's wilderness teachings. "I couldn't go for the sheriff," Noah explained, sliding down the muddy slope. "Storm washed out the bridge to town. But I made this." The woman was where he'd left her, clutching his compass, her face drawn with pain. The splint had held, but her skin had taken on a grayish tone that worried Noah. "You came back," she whispered, relief evident in her voice. "I promised," Noah answered simply, as if keeping promises was the most natural thing in the world. In his 7 years, Noah had helped his mother rescue injured animals and once even a lost hiker. But moving a full-grown woman with a broken leg would be different. He knelt beside her, explaining his plan while he worked to position the stretcher. "I'll need to pull you onto this," he said. "It's gonna hurt, but I can't carry you up the hill." She nodded weakly. "I trust you." The transfer was difficult, punctuated by the woman's stifled cries and Noah's determined grunts. Once she was secured with strips of hide, Noah began the laborious process of hauling the stretcher up the ravine using a rope system he'd rigged through sturdy trees. At the top, both were breathing hard. Noah wiped sweat from his brow despite the cool rain. "Cabin's about a mile," he said. "Mostly flat, but we need to move before dark." The journey through the forest was slow and arduous. Noah pulled the stretcher with a rope harnessed around his small chest, leaning forward to gain traction on the wet ground. Occasionally he paused to check on his passenger, offering sips from his canteen and reassuring words. "Not much further now," he'd say. Though the distance seemed to stretch endlessly, the woman drifted between consciousness and something deeper. When awake, she watched Noah with wonder, this small, determined child navigating the wilderness with confidence beyond his years. "How do you know all this?" she asked during one rest break, gesturing weakly at the forest around them. Noah adjusted a smooth wooden staff tucked under one arm, a walking stick he used for balance on treacherous ground. "My mama taught me," he said. "She knows everything about the mountains." The woman's eyes clouded with confusion. "Your mother," she repeated slowly. "And you think I might be—" "You smell like her," Noah said firmly. "And something in me just knows." As dusk settled among the trees, the misty outline of Noah's cabin finally appeared through the pines. The boy's pace quickened, energized by the sight of home. Inside, Noah worked efficiently by lamplight, transforming his mother's bed into a sick room. He helped the woman onto the clean sheets, then gathered supplies, fresh water, clean cloths, and a jar of salve his mother had made from forest plants. "This might sting," he warned as he cleaned the gash on her forehead. His small hands moved with surprising gentleness. The woman studied the cabin while he worked, the hand-sewn curtains, the collection of pine cones on the windowsill, the drawings tacked to the wall. Something about the space felt oddly familiar, yet impossible to place. "Have you really been living here alone?" she asked. Noah nodded, applying salve to her wound. 342 days. His matter-of-fact tone broke her heart. "What happened to your mother?" Noah's hands stilled momentarily. "Storm came. Creek flooded. She went to check our animal traps before things got bad." His voice remained steady, but emotion flickered in his eyes. "Said she'd be back before dark. Never came. And no one took you to live elsewhere?" "Sheriff wanted to, but this is our home. She'll find me here when she comes back." He gestured to the walking stick, leaning against the wall, a beautiful piece of mountain ash. Its surface polished smooth, intricate carvings spiraling down its length. "That's hers. She'd never leave it behind for good." She carved our initials in the handle. The woman's gaze followed his to the walking stick. Something stirred in her mind, a fleeting impression, gone before she could grasp it. After tending her wounds, Noah heated soup on the wood stove. The rich aroma of vegetables and rabbit meat filled the small cabin. "You should eat," he said, offering a steaming bowl. "Food helps healing. Mama always says so." She accepted gratefully, surprised by her hunger. The soup tasted familiar somehow, comforting in a way she couldn't articulate. "You're good at this," she said softly. "Taking care of people?" "Had practice with injured animals," Noah replied with a shrug. "Deer, foxes, birds with broken wings." As night settled fully outside, Noah built up the fire against the mountain chill. He placed his mother's quilt carefully over the woman, tucking it around her with practiced hands. "You should sleep," he instructed. "I'll be right there if you need anything." He pointed to his small bedroom off the main room. The woman caught his hand as he turned to leave. "Noah," she said, testing the name on her lips. "Thank you," he nodded solemnly. "You're welcome." He paused at the doorway, looking back with eyes full of cautious hope. "Good night, Mama." The question hung in the air between them. The woman felt tears well up, unable to confirm or deny what he so desperately wanted to hear. "Good night, Noah," she whispered instead. After he disappeared into the small bedroom, she stared into the dancing flames of the wood stove, trying to catch the fleeting shadows of memory that darted just beyond her grasp. Outside, an owl called into the darkness, a sound that resonated with something deep and unnamed within her. Dawn light filtered through the cabin windows when the woman awoke, momentarily disoriented by unfamiliar surroundings. Pain throbbed in her leg, anchoring her to reality, the ravine, the boy, the rescue. She pushed herself to a sitting position, wincing as she moved. Noah was already awake, tending the wood stove with practiced efficiency. His small frame cast a long shadow in the morning light. "You're up," he said, noticing her movement. "How's your leg?" "Painful," she admitted. "But better than yesterday." Noah nodded approvingly. "Fever's down too. Your cheeks aren't so red." He brought her water in a hand-carved wooden cup, then helped her to a more comfortable position, propping her leg on a folded blanket with surprising knowledge of proper elevation. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "I can make oatmeal." While Noah prepared breakfast, the woman took in her surroundings more carefully. The cabin was small but meticulously maintained. Dried herbs hung from rafters. Hand-sewn curtains framed windows that looked out onto misty forest. Everything had a place, suggesting a methodical mind behind the arrangement. "This was your mother's bed?" she asked, running her fingers over the patchwork quilt. "Yes," Noah answered, stirring the pot of oatmeal. "Everything's just how she left it." He brought her a steaming bowl, then disappeared briefly into the other room, returning with something clutched carefully in his hands. "I want to show you something," he said, his expression both hopeful and guarded. He placed a wooden box on the bed beside her. The lid was carved with a pattern of oak leaves. Beautiful, intricate work. Noah opened it reverently to reveal a collection of photographs, letters, and small mementos. "This is our memory box," he explained. "Mama said we needed to keep memories safe because they're more precious than gold." He selected a photograph from the collection and handed it to her. A woman with dark hair stood on the cabin porch, her arm around a younger Noah. They were both smiling, the resemblance between them unmistakable in their eyes and the curve of their mouths. "That's my mama," Noah said simply. "Her name is Ellie Green." The woman studied the photograph, searching the familiar yet unfamiliar face for any spark of recognition. The woman in the picture had the same dark hair, similar features. But something wasn't quite right. The woman couldn't place what. Noah watched her intently. "Do you see? You look just like her." She handed the photograph back carefully. "I can see why you think so," she said gently. Disappointment flickered across Noah's face, but he persisted, pulling out more photographs. "Look, here's when we went fishing at Silver Creek." Another photo showed Ellie teaching a very young Noah to bait a hook. "And here's when we found the bear cubs, one by one." Noah shared his memories, his mother teaching him to identify edible plants, celebrating his 6th birthday with a homemade cake, building a snowman taller than the cabin steps. The woman absorbed these glimpses into a life she couldn't remember, torn between the desire to be this boy's mother and the nagging sense that something wasn't aligning properly. "Noah," she said carefully, "I wish I could tell you for certain who I am, but my mind feels like—" She struggled for the right words. "Like a puzzle with missing pieces." Noah nodded, disappointment evident but not unexpected. "Mama says healing takes time. Your head got hurt pretty bad." He reached into the memory box again, this time withdrawing a small leather-bound journal with worn edges. "This is hers too," he said. "She writes in it every night." The woman accepted the journal hesitantly. "Should we be reading this? It seems private." "She always let me read it," Noah insisted, though something in his expression suggested this might not be entirely true. "Maybe it will help you remember." She opened the journal carefully. The handwriting was neat and flowing, the entries dated meticulously. She read aloud from a random page. April 10. Noah tracked deer today without guidance. His instincts are remarkable. Sometimes I wonder if he remembers more than he should, if the blood in his veins carries memories from before. The entry continued, but a sharp pain lanced through her temple. The woman winced, pressing her fingers to her forehead. "Are you okay?" Noah asked, alarmed. "Just a headache," she assured him, though the pain was intense. "It happens when I try to remember." Noah took the journal back. marking the page with a slip of paper. "We can try again later." As he returned the memory box to its place, the woman noticed something on the cabin wall she hadn't seen before. A framed botanical drawing of mountain plants, beautifully rendered in colored pencil and labeled in the same flowing script from the journal. "Did your mother draw that?" she asked. Noah nodded proudly. "She knows every plant in these mountains. Taught me which ones heal and which ones hurt." He touched the frame reverently. "She made medicine from them. People from town would come for her remedies when the doctor couldn't help." "She sounds remarkable," the woman said softly. "She is," Noah corrected firmly. "Not was is." They ate breakfast in contemplative silence. Afterward, Noah helped her to the porch, where she could sit in fresh air while he tended to necessary chores. Bringing water, checking nearby traps, splitting kindling for the wood stove, the woman watched him work, this small boy moving through adult responsibilities with unnerving competence. Occasionally, he would glance her way, as if confirming she was still there, hadn't disappeared like the mother he so desperately missed. Later, as afternoon shadows lengthened across the clearing, Noah sat beside her on the porch step, his small shoulder nearly touching her arm. "We should give you a name," he said suddenly. "Until you remember your real one." She smiled. "What would you suggest?" He considered this seriously. "Maybe we could call you Ellie, since you might be her." The woman felt an uncomfortable tightness in her chest. "I think that might be confusing for both of us," she said gently. "Perhaps something different just for now." Noah nodded, disappointed but accepting. "Then maybe Hope, because I hoped for so long that I'd find her." Something about the name resonated within her, not as her identity, but as something this child needed desperately. "Hope," she repeated. "Yes, that works for now." The crunch of tires on gravel alerted them first. Noah's head snapped up from the trap he was mending on the porch, his body instantly tense. Hope watched his transformation from relaxed child to wary sentinel with concern. "It's Thursday," Noah said, more to himself than to her. "Sheriff's Day." A dusty brown Bronco pulled into the clearing, its official county emblem partially obscured by mud. Noah stood, positioning himself instinctively between the vehicle and Hope. "Stay here," he whispered urgently. "Let me talk to him first." The man who emerged from the vehicle was tall and lean, with salt and pepper hair cropped short beneath a standard-issue sheriff's hat. Deep lines carved his weathered face, speaking of years under mountain sun. Despite his imposing height, there was something gentle in his bearing as he approached. "Morning, Noah," he called, then stopped short when he noticed Hope on the porch. Surprise, confusion, and something like alarm crossed his features in rapid succession. His hand moved instinctively toward his holster, then stopped. "Ma'am," he said cautiously. "I wasn't aware Noah had company." Noah stepped forward. "She's hurt, Sheriff Miller. Found her in the ravine during the storm. Her leg's broken and she hit her head." Sheriff Miller's gaze remained fixed on Hope, his expression unreadable. "Is that right, ma'am?" Hope nodded. "The boy saved my life." The sheriff approached slowly as one might a wild animal. His eyes never left her face, studying every feature with unsettling intensity. When he reached the porch steps, he removed his hat, revealing more of his weathered face and concerned eyes. "My name is James Miller, Sheriff of Piney Creek County," he said formally. "And you are?" Hope glanced at Noah, whose expression silently pleaded with her. "I'm afraid I don't know," she answered truthfully. "I sustained a head injury. My memory is fragmented." Sheriff Miller's eyes narrowed slightly. "I see." He unclipped the radio from his belt. "Well, we should get you to a hospital in Ashton." "I'll radio for an ambulance." "No!" Noah stepped between them again.
"She can't leave."
"She needs to stay here and get better." The sheriff placed a firm but gentle hand on Noah's shoulder. "Son, this woman needs medical attention. Dr. Peterson should examine her at minimum." "I've been taking care of her," Noah insisted. "Just like Mama taught me." At the mention of Noah's mother, something shifted in Sheriff Miller's demeanor. He studied Hope's face more intently, then slowly reached for something in his breast pocket. It was a worn leather wallet. From it, he extracted a small photograph, glancing from it to Hope and back again. "Ma'am," His voice had dropped to nearly a whisper. "Would you mind standing if you're able?" With help, of course. Noah rushed to assist her. With his support and the porch railing, Hope managed to stand, keeping weight off her injured leg. Sheriff Miller stared at her, his professional composure cracking slightly. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered under his breath. "See," Noah said triumphantly. "It's her." "It's Mama." The sheriff shook his head slowly, his expression troubled. "Noah, I need a private word with our guest." Before Noah could protest, he added, "Just on the other side of the porch. You can keep us in sight." Reluctantly, Noah moved away, though he remained watchful, perched on a woodpile near the cabin corner. Sheriff Miller turned to Hope, keeping his voice low. "Ma'am, I don't know who you are or where you came from, but I need to be direct. You bear an uncanny resemblance to Ellie Green, Noah's mother." He handed her the photograph from his wallet. It showed a younger Sheriff Miller standing beside the woman from Noah's memory box. They were both in uniform, he in Sheriff's brown, she in Forest Ranger green. "Ellie was one of our part-time rangers," he explained. "Best tracker in 3 counties. She went missing during a flash flood last year. We searched for weeks, never found a trace." His voice thickened. "That boy's been alone ever since, refusing to leave this cabin because he believes she's coming back." Hope studied the photograph, searching for any spark of recognition. "I understand your concern," she said carefully, "but I genuinely don't remember who I am." "The resemblance must be coincidence." Sheriff Miller retrieved the photo, his expression doubtful. "Coincidence doesn't begin to cover it, ma'am. The boy's been through enough without giving him false hope. If you're not Ellie," he hesitated. "Well, the kindest thing would be to let me take you to town now, before he gets more attached." Hope glanced at Noah, who watched them with undisguised anxiety. "I understand," she said softly, "but I can barely walk. At least let me heal enough to travel safely." The sheriff considered this, absently rubbing his thumb across the silver star pinned to his chest, a gesture that seemed unconscious, habitual. The badge was worn with years of service, its edges smoothed by time and touch. 2 days, he finally agreed. "Then I'm bringing Dr. Peterson out here, and we'll decide next steps." He leaned closer, his voice dropping further. "But ma'am, if you remember anything at all, you call me immediately. That boy's heart is fragile, despite his tough exterior." He handed her a card with his number, and then turned back toward Noah. "I'm leaving the supplies Mrs. Abernathy sent," he called, gesturing to a box in his vehicle. "And I'll be back day after tomorrow with the doctor." Noah hurried back to Hope's side as the sheriff retrieved the box. "What did he say to you?" he whispered urgently. "He's concerned about my injuries," Hope answered carefully. "He wants the doctor to examine me." Sheriff Miller returned with the supply box, setting it on the porch. "There's extra bandages in there," he told Noah, "and some of those cookies you like." To Hope he added, "Ma'am, I'll run your description through our missing persons database. Maybe we can figure out who you are." As he turned to leave, Noah called after him, "She's my mama, Sheriff." "I know it." The sheriff paused, his back to them. For a moment, he seemed to sag slightly under the weight of something unseen. Without turning, he replied, "We'll sort it all out soon." "Noah." Then he climbed into his vehicle and drove away, dust settling in his wake. Noah watched until the Bronco disappeared among the trees, then turned to Hope, his expression fierce with determination. "He doesn't believe me," he said. "But I know. I can feel it." Hope met his gaze, wishing she could give him the certainty he craved. "Noah," she said gently, "what if I'm not her? What if I can't be who you want me to be?" His small jaw set stubbornly. "Then we'll keep looking." "But you are. You have to be." As the sun began to set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across the clearing, Hope wondered not just who she was, but who she might need to become for this child who had already lost so much. The doctor arrived precisely when promised, his ancient blue Volvo struggling up the mountain road behind Sheriff Miller's Bronco. Noah watched from the window, his expression a mixture of apprehension and defiance. "Remember," he whispered to Hope, who sat propped on the bed. "You don't have to go if you don't want to." Hope squeezed his small hand reassuringly. Though her own mind was troubled, 2 days of quiet conversation with Noah had only deepened her confusion. Certain aspects of the cabin felt hauntingly familiar. She'd reached for a mug in the correct cupboard without being told, had known which floorboard creaked before stepping on it. Yet other things remained stubbornly foreign, like trying to read a book in a language she almost understood. The cabin door opened after a perfunctory knock. Sheriff Miller entered first, followed by a tall, stooped man with a shock of white hair and round spectacles perched on a prominent nose. He carried a worn leather medical bag that looked as aged as he did. Dr. Peterson, the sheriff introduced. Our guest with the memory problem. The doctor approached with a kind smile that crinkled his entire face. Well now, he said, his voice surprisingly deep for his slender frame. Sheriff tells me you've had quite an adventure. He set his medical bag on the bedside table, the leather creaking as the clasp opened. Inside was an organized array of modern medical supplies, a jarring contrast to the antique exterior. I'm going to examine you, if that's all right, he said, already pulling out a stethoscope. Noah, perhaps you could give us some privacy. Noah stood his ground. I helped fix her leg. I should stay. Dr. Peterson exchanged a glance with the sheriff, who gave a subtle nod. All right, then, the doctor conceded. But stand back a bit so I can work. The examination was thorough and methodical. Dr. Peterson listened to her heart and lungs, checked her reflexes, examined her pupils with a penlight, and carefully unwrapped Noah's homemade splint to assess her leg. The break isn't compound, he concluded, rewrapping the leg with professional bandages from his bag. But it's certainly fractured. You'll need a proper cast and likely an X-ray to confirm there's no further damage. He turned his attention to the wound on her head, gentle fingers parting her hair to reveal a healing gash. Any nausea? Dizziness? Confusion beyond the memory loss? Some headaches, Hope admitted, especially when I try to remember. The doctor nodded thoughtfully, jotting notes on a small pad. Classic retrograde amnesia symptoms. The mind protecting itself from trauma. Will she get her memories back? Noah asked, his voice small but insistent. Dr. Peterson looked at the boy over his spectacles. Memory is complicated, he explained. Sometimes it returns all at once, sometimes in fragments. Sometimes... He left the sentence unfinished. But the implication was clear. But it could come back, Noah pressed. It could, the doctor agreed carefully. Familiar surroundings, routines, sensory triggers, these can all help. Sheriff Miller cleared his throat. Doc, would you mind stepping outside with me a minute? The two men exited, leaving Noah hovering protectively near Hope. Through the window, she could see them in serious conversation, the sheriff gesturing occasionally toward the cabin. They want to take you away, Noah said, confirming her suspicions. But I won't let them, Hope sighed, stroking his hair gently. Noah, they're trying to help. I need medical care beyond what we can manage here. His face crumpled slightly. But what if you don't come back? What if you forget about me? The pain in his voice struck deep. I wouldn't forget you, she promised. Not ever. The door reopened as Dr. Peterson returned alone, carrying something from his vehicle. It was a set of aluminum crutches, which he leaned against the bed. A compromise, he announced. Sheriff Miller has convinced me that moving you immediately might cause undue stress. I'll leave these crutches and proper medical supplies. I've also arranged for meals to be delivered daily from town. Relief flooded Noah's face. However, the doctor continued firmly, I'm scheduling an ambulance for 3 days from now to transport you to Ashton Regional for proper scans and treatment. Non-negotiable. He reached into his medical bag, extracting a series of prescription bottles. As he arranged them on the nightstand, explaining dosages and timing, Hope noticed something unusual about the bag itself. Unlike the exterior, the inside lining was modern and embroidered with a small monogram, E.G. Dr. Peterson caught her studying it. Ah, yes, he said, his voice softening. This was Ellie's modification. She relined my old bag with waterproof material after I complained about medicines getting damp during house calls in the rain. Talented with a needle, that woman. Something flickered in Hope's mind, a memory of thread pulling through fabric, the satisfaction of a perfect stitch. then vanished before she could grasp it. "She was your friend?" Hope asked carefully. "More than that," Dr. Peterson replied. "I delivered her same as I delivered her mother before her. Known the Green women for 3 generations. His eyes crinkled at Noah. "This young man, too, of course. Came into the world howling like he had something important to say." Sheriff Miller reappeared at the door. "Time to head back, Doc. Storm's moving in." The doctor nodded, closing his bag with practiced hands. "I'll return day after tomorrow to check your progress. Follow the medication schedule precisely." He turned to Noah. "You're in charge of timing. Think you can handle that responsibility?" Noah straightened, nodding solemnly. "Yes, sir." As they prepared to leave, Sheriff Miller lingered in the doorway. "Mom, we still haven't found any missing persons matching your description. When you come to the hospital, we'll take fingerprints. See if that leads somewhere." After they departed, Noah moved about the cabin with renewed energy, organizing the medicine bottles and preparing a simple dinner. Only when they sat together in the growing dusk did he finally ask the question that had clearly been troubling him. "If you're not my mama," he said carefully, "who do you think you might be?" Hope considered the flashes of memory that had surfaced, disjointed images, feelings without context, a sense of running from something or someone. "Nothing concrete enough to form an identity?" "I don't know," she answered honestly. "But I promise you this, whoever I was before, right now I'm your friend. That's something I'm certain of." Noah nodded, accepting this provisional truth. Outside, the first drops of rain began to patter against the roof as the promised storm arrived. Morning brought clarity after the storm, both in the pristine mountain air and in Hope's improving condition. The medication Dr. Peterson prescribed had reduced the swelling in her leg and eased the persistent headaches. With Noah's help and the aluminum crutches, she managed her first full tour of the small cabin. "This is where we keep winter supplies," Noah explained, opening a cedar chest filled with thick woolen blankets. "And here's where Mama keeps her sewing things." He pointed to a wicker basket beside the rocking chair. Hope noticed his consistent use of present tense when speaking of his mother. The past 11 months might as well have been hours in Noah's mind. Using the crutches awkwardly, Hope made her way to the kitchen area. Noah hovered nearby, ready to assist but trying not to hover. Her hands moved almost of their own accord, reaching for a canister on a high shelf. "That's where the coffee is," Noah confirmed, watching her closely. "Do you remember?" Hope shook her head. "Not exactly. It just felt right." These moments of instinctive knowledge had been increasing. Small actions her body seemed to remember, even if her mind did not. She knew which drawer held utensils without asking. She'd hummed a tune while washing dishes that Noah instantly recognized as his song, yet other things remained stubbornly foreign. When Noah showed her his mother's handwriting in a recipe book, it evoked no recognition. When he described their tradition of Sunday hikes to Eagle Rock, she couldn't picture the vista he described with such detail. "Maybe we should try something different," Noah suggested as they settled at the small kitchen table with tea. His expression was thoughtful beyond his years. Dr. Peterson said sensory triggers might help. He disappeared into his bedroom, returning with a colorful Afghan folded carefully in his arms. The blanket was beautiful, panels of sunset colors rippling between borders of deep forest green. "Mama made this," he explained, draping it gently across Hope's lap. "Every winter she adds new squares. She says it tells our story." Hope ran her fingers over the intricate pattern. The craftsmanship was exquisite, each stitch placed with care and precision. Something stirred in her mind, the rhythm of needles clicking, the satisfaction of colors blending together. "It's beautiful," she murmured. "This square is from when we saw the northern lights," Noah explained, pointing to a section of blues and greens with streaks of luminous white. "And this one is from when we found the fox den with Kits," he continued around the blanket, each panel apparently holding a specific memory. The autumn they collected 5 different kinds of wild mushrooms. The spring, the creek flooded and they caught trout from the front porch. The winter they were snowed in for 2 weeks and read the entire Chronicles of Narnia by lamplight. The Afghan was more than a blanket. It was a textile journal of their lives together. Hope felt tears gathering inexplicably as her fingers traced a panel of soft yellow with a tiny embroidered sun. "This one?" she asked, not knowing why this particular square drew her attention. Noah's face brightened. "That's the day we moved here. I was really little. You said the sun came out just as we arrived, and it was a sign this would be our happy place. You remember that?" "You must have been very young." "I was 3, Noah confirmed. "But I remember because you tell the story every year on our cabin anniversary." Hope closed her eyes, trying to capture the elusive fragment of memory that seemed just beyond reach. She could almost see it, sunlight breaking through clouds, a small cabin in a clearing, a child's laughter. The sound of approaching footsteps on the porch interrupted her concentration. Noah tensed, then relaxed as a familiar voice called out, "Delivery from Martha's kitchen." He hurried to the door, returning with a basket covered with a checkered cloth. A middle-aged woman with graying auburn hair followed him in, her curious eyes immediately finding Hope. "Well, hello there," the woman said, her mountain accent thick and melodious. "I'm Martha Wilson from the general store. Dr. Peterson asked me to bring up some provisions." Her gaze lingered on Hope's face, a complicated mixture of emotions crossing her features. "Thank you," Hope said, suddenly self-conscious under the woman's scrutiny. She tried to rise, forgetting her injured leg, and nearly fell. Martha rushed forward to steady her. As their hands touched, the woman gasped softly. "My stars," she whispered. "You do look just like her," Noah beamed triumphantly. "See, I told you." Martha's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "It's uncanny. If I didn't know better," she shook her head, composing herself. "Well, I've brought chicken soup and fresh bread, and some of my apple turnovers that Noah's so fond of." She busied herself arranging the food, but her gaze kept returning to Hope. Finally, she said, "You know, this Afghan was Ellie's pride and joy." She touched the colorful blanket reverently. "I taught her to crochet when she first moved to Piney Creek. Never seen anyone take to it so naturally." Hope looked down at the Afghan, still draped across her lap, her fingers absently tracing the pattern of a square with mountains and stars. "This one," Martha said, noticing the movement she made after the meteor shower last spring. Said the mountains seemed magical that night, all lit up by falling stars. A sudden, vivid image flashed in Hope's mind, lying on a patchwork quilt on dewy grass, a small, warm body curled against her side, the night sky ablaze with streaking light. The memory was so clear, so specific, that her breath caught. "You remember something?" Noah asked eagerly, watching her face. I'm not sure," Hope admitted. "Just a flash. Stars falling like rain." Martha and Noah exchanged meaningful glances. The older woman squeezed Hope's shoulder gently before turning to leave. "I'll be back tomorrow with more food," she promised from the doorway. "And perhaps some old photographs from town gatherings, if that might help." After she left, Noah sat close to Hope on the small sofa, the Afghan wrapped around both of them. "You're starting to remember," he said with quiet certainty. "I knew you would." Hope wished she could share his confidence. The flashes felt real, yet disjointed, like scenes from a life she'd observed rather than lived. And beneath them lurked something darker, something her mind seemed determined to protect her from. "Noah," she said gently, "even if I remember some things, we need to be prepared. I might not be who you think I am." His small hand found hers beneath the colorful Afghan. "But you might be," he countered. "And that's enough for now." The news spread through Piney Creek like wildfire. By midday, Martha Wilson's general store buzzed with speculation about the mysterious woman at Noah Green's cabin. The town's residents gathered in small clusters, their voices hushed yet animated. "Looks just like Ellie, Martha swears it," whispered Doris Jenkins, the postmistress. "Says if she didn't know better, she'd think Ellie walked right out of the forest after all this time. But she doesn't remember anything?" asked Frank Thompson, who ran the hardware store. "Amnesia, they're saying," Doris replied. "Hit her head in some kind of accident. Mighty convenient," muttered Harold Finch, an elderly farmer whose suspicion ran as deep as his mountain roots. "Woman appears out of nowhere, looking like our Ellie right in the boy's backyard. Don't smell right to me. Harold, Martha scolded, placing fresh coffee on the counter. That child's been alone nearly a year, clinging to hope when the rest of us gave up. If anyone deserves a miracle, it's Noah Green. In the corner, Sheriff Miller sipped his coffee silently, listening. He'd stopped by ostensibly for supplies, but Martha knew he was gauging the town's reaction. When the bell above the door jingled, conversations paused as Dr. Peterson entered. Removing his hat with a nod to the assembled townsfolk, "Doc," several voices greeted respectfully. The sheriff stood, gesturing the physician toward a quiet corner. Their hushed conversation was closely watched, though none could hear the words exchanged. "What do you make of her, James?" Dr. Peterson asked quietly. "I'm not sure," the sheriff admitted. "The resemblance is uncanny. But Ellie's been gone nearly a year, and this woman showed up with a broken leg and a head injury, wearing hiking gear that doesn't match anything Ellie owned. Could be she's survived somehow." "Found new clothes?" Sheriff Miller shook his head. "We searched every inch of those mountains. If she'd been out there, we'd have found something. And there's Noah to consider. Boy's convinced this woman is his mother. If she's not, Dr. Peterson said gently, then we have two mysteries to solve: who this woman really is, and what happened to our Ellie." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Reverend Thomas, whose church served as both spiritual center and community hub for Piney Creek. The elderly minister moved slowly with his cane, but his presence commanded immediate respect. "Sheriff Doctor," he greeted them. "I hear our young Noah believes he's found his mother." "News travels fast," Sheriff Miller remarked dryly. "Small towns," the Reverend smiled. "We breathe the same air, drink the same water, share the same stories." He tapped his cane thoughtfully against the wooden floor. "I'd like to visit them if that's permitted." "Don't see why not," Dr. Peterson replied. "The woman, she's calling herself Hope for now, seems stable. Having town visitors might even help trigger memories, if she is indeed our Ellie." As the men spoke, Martha approached with a yellowed newspaper she'd retrieved from beneath the counter. "Found this," she said, spreading it carefully on the table. "From when Ellie first came to town with little Noah." The Piney Creek Gazette's front page featured a photograph of a young woman holding a toddler, standing before the town's annual Harvest Festival banner. The headline read, "Newcomer and Son Win Blue Ribbon for Wild Berry Preserves." "Ellie never did say much about where she came from," Martha mused. "Just showed up one day with Noah, barely more than a baby then, and that old cabin key her grandfather had left her." Sheriff Miller studied the photograph. "I ran her name through the system back then, standard procedure for newcomers. Nothing came up, except a birth certificate and driver's license from Kentucky. No criminal record, no missing persons hits, nothing suspicious. She kept to herself those first years," Reverend Thomas recalled. "Only started coming to town regularly after I found her gathering herbs near the church and invited her to our community garden." "The woman at the cabin," Dr. Peterson interjected. "Does she have any distinguishing marks? Birthmarks, scars, anything that could confirm identity?" Sheriff Miller shook his head. "None that I observed. And Noah hasn't mentioned anything. Ellie had that small birthmark behind her right ear," Martha offered. "Shaped like a crescent moon. Always wore her hair down because she was self-conscious about it." "That would be something to check," the sheriff acknowledged. As the conversation continued, more townspeople drifted over, each adding snippets of memories about Ellie Green, how she'd helped deliver the Cooper twins when the blizzard prevented Dr. Peterson from reaching them, her uncanny ability to predict weather changes before the meteorologists, the herbal remedies she made that seemed to work when conventional medicines failed. "Remember that awful flu 3 winters back?" Frank Thompson said. "My Mary was so sick, the hospital in Ashton said to prepare for the worst. Ellie brought that dark tea that smelled like dirt and pine. Mary was up and about in 2 days. And when old man Jenkins's hunting dogs got lost in that unexpected early snow," added Doris, "Ellie tracked them 15 miles through weather that would have killed most folks. She wasn't just a neighbor," Reverend Thomas said softly. "She was our guardian angel in many ways." Sheriff Miller listened to these accounts, his expression thoughtful. He'd known Ellie primarily through her part-time work with the Forestry Service, appreciating her skills without understanding the depth of her integration into the community. "Well," he finally said, rising to leave, "I'll be heading back up to the cabin tomorrow with Dr. Peterson. I'll check for that birthmark and report back." At the door, he turned. "In the meantime, let's not get the boys' hopes too high, or our own." After he left, Martha retrieved something from behind the counter, a handwritten recipe card in familiar, flowing script. "Ellie's wild blackberry cobbler," she explained, a tear threatening at the corner of her eye. "Said it was the taste of home, wherever home might be." The small gathering fell silent, each person lost in their own memories of the woman who'd appeared mysteriously in their town and disappeared just as mysteriously, leaving behind a child who refused to believe she was gone. "If she is Ellie," Reverend Thomas finally said, "then we're witnessing a miracle. And if she's not," he paused, tapping his cane thoughtfully, "then perhaps she's been sent to us for reasons we don't yet understand." By her third day at the cabin, Hope had established a tentative rhythm to her movements. The crutches were awkward but manageable, allowing her to navigate the small space with increasing confidence. Noah watched her progress with unconcealed delight, interpreting each new independence as further evidence of his mother's return. "You're getting faster," he observed as Hope made her way from bedroom to kitchen without pausing for breath. "Practice helps," she replied, managing a small smile despite the ache in her arms. Noah had risen early to prepare breakfast, a simple porridge with dried berries and honey. The care with which he measured and stirred betrayed months of self-reliance beyond his years. As Hope settled at the table, he placed a steaming mug before her. "I made your tea the way you like it," he said casually. "Just a little honey, no milk." Hope raised the mug to her lips, the fragrant steam carrying notes of herbs and pine. The taste was somehow familiar, comforting in a way she couldn't articulate. Without thinking, she reached for the blue ceramic mug with the chipped handle, rather than the one Noah had initially set out. His eyes widened. "That's the one you always use." Hope stared at the mug in her hand, not remembering the conscious decision to select it. The blue ceramic felt right against her palm, the chip on the handle fitting perfectly beneath her index finger. She began, then faltered. "It just felt natural," Noah nodded eagerly. "You made it yourself 2 summers ago. We dug clay from the riverbank and fired it in a pit. Mine cracked, but yours came out perfect, except for the chip when you dropped it during the thunderstorm." Hope examined the mug more carefully. The glaze was uneven in places, clearly handmade rather than mass-produced. Faint impressions of small leaves decorated the surface, pressed into the clay before firing, creating a subtle pattern. "Maple leaves," she murmured, tracing the imprints with her fingertip. "You said they reminded you of your grandmother's house," Noah supplied, watching her intently. "The big maple that dropped seeds that twirled like helicopter blades." The image formed in Hope's mind, a massive tree with spreading branches, sunlight filtering through leaves, small winged seeds spiraling to the ground. A child's laughter, her own, as she chased the twirling seeds across a neatly mown lawn. "I can see it," she said softly. Noah leaned forward eagerly. "What else?" "What else do you remember?" Hope closed her eyes, trying to hold on to the fragile image, but it slipped away like mist through fingers. "Just the tree, nothing more." Disappointment flickered across Noah's face, quickly replaced by determination. "It's a start. Dr. Peterson said memories might come back in pieces." After breakfast, Hope felt strong enough to venture onto the porch. The mountain air was crisp with early autumn, carrying the scent of pine and distant wood smoke. She settled into a weathered rocking chair, surprised by how naturally her body found its rhythm, not too fast, not too slow. A gentle cadence that matched her breathing. Noah brought out his school books, explaining that his mother had homeschooled him since they moved to the mountains. He worked diligently on math problems, while Hope watched, impressed by his focus. "You're good at this," she observed. "Math is easy," he replied without looking up. "Science too, but I don't like spelling. What about reading?" Noah's face brightened. "I love stories. Mama, he caught himself glancing at her uncertainly. You used to read to me every night, even after I could read myself. Hope felt the familiar twist of discomfort when Noah slipped between addressing her directly as his mother and speaking of Ellie in the third person. She didn't correct him. The psychological tightrope they walked seemed too fragile for such distinctions. What were we reading before the storm? She asked instead. Noah disappeared inside, returning with a well-worn copy of The Secret Garden. A pressed wildflower marked their place halfway through. We take turns reading chapters, he explained. It was your turn next. Hope accepted the book, running her fingers over the fabric cover. Opening to the marked page, she began reading aloud. The words flowed naturally, her voice finding a storyteller's cadence without conscious effort. Noah closed his eyes, a smile spreading across his face. You always do the voices, he whispered. Just like that. When she finished the chapter, Noah was looking at her with a mixture of triumph and longing. See, you'll remember how to read to me. It might just be muscle memory, Hope suggested gently. Our bodies remember patterns even when our minds don't, or it might be because you're her. Noah countered. The sound of tires on gravel interrupted their conversation. Dr. Peterson's blew. Volvo appeared with Sheriff Miller's Bronco close behind. As the vehicles parked in the clearing, Noah's expression darkened. They're going to try to take you to the hospital today, he said, his voice tight with worry. Hope nodded, having expected this. We knew they would. But that doesn't mean I'm leaving forever. Promise? Noah asked, suddenly looking every bit his 7 years. I promise to come back if I can, she replied carefully. No matter what we discover. As the men approached, Noah squeezed her hand once, then straightened his shoulders, a child preparing to defend his territory against well-meaning adults. Sheriff Miller noticed the book in Hope's lap. Reading time? He asked casually. The Secret Garden, Hope confirmed, marking their place carefully with the pressed flower. Something flickered in the sheriff's eyes. Ellie's favorite, he said quietly. She kept a copy in her ranger pack, said the forest made more sense after reading it. Dr. Peterson set his medical bag on the porch rail. How's our patient today? Better, Hope reported. I can manage the crutches now and the headaches are less frequent. Good, the doctor nodded. I've arranged for the ambulance. They'll be here within the hour to transport you to Ashton Regional. Noah's face fell, despite the warning. So soon? Better to get proper treatment without delay, Dr. Peterson replied gently. X-rays, proper casting, perhaps some tests for the amnesia. Hope nodded, accepting the inevitable. I'll need to gather a few things. Already taken care of, Sheriff Miller interjected, gesturing to a small duffel bag in his hand. Martha sent some clothes that should fit. Nothing fancy, but clean and practical, as Hope prepared to go inside and change. She noticed Noah had gone very still, his gaze fixed on the blue mug she'd left on the porch rail. You picked it, he said softly. Without me telling you which one was yours. Sheriff Miller and Dr. Peterson exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable, just a coincidence. Perhaps, Dr. Peterson suggested, but the weight of the small blue mug, with its chipped handle and maple leaf impressions, suddenly seemed enormous, a tangible link to a past that remained stubbornly out of reach, yet close enough to brush with fingertips. The hospital room in Ashton Regional was starkly different from the warm wooden walls of Noah's cabin. Antiseptic scents replaced pine and wood smoke. Mechanical beeps substituted for birdsong and rustling leaves. Hope found herself longing for the mountain air after just one night. Noah had been reluctant to stay behind, but Sheriff Miller had convinced him with promises of daily visits and regular phone updates. Dr. Peterson had arranged for Hope to be admitted under special circumstances, explaining her unusual amnesia case to colleagues with greater expertise. By afternoon, Hope had endured X-rays confirming a clean break, received a proper cast, and submitted to a battery of neurological tests. She was resting when Sheriff Miller arrived, manila folder in hand, and concern etched across his weathered features. "How's Noah?" she asked immediately. Holding up, the sheriff replied. Martha's staying with him. Says he's barely slept, keeps rearranging things in the cabin so they'll be just right when you return. He paused. If you return, Hope met his gaze steadily. I promised him I would if possible. That's partly why I'm here. Sheriff Miller settled into the visitor's chair, setting the folder on the bedside table. The doctors say physically you'll be fine to leave in a day or two. The question is where you'll go. I don't understand, the sheriff sighed. There's been a development. He opened the folder, revealing an official-looking document with a grainy photograph attached. We ran your fingerprints through the system. Got a hit from the neighboring county. Hope's heart quickened. You know who I am? Perhaps. He handed her the document. 3 weeks ago, a hiker was reported missing from Black Ridge Trail, about 15 miles from where Noah found you. Sarah Jensen, 32, elementary school teacher from Charlotte. She was on a solo backpacking trip, missed her check-in call with family. Hope studied the photograph, a smiling woman with dark hair and features remarkably similar to her own. The resemblance was undeniable, though something felt off, like looking at a slightly distorted mirror image. You think this is me? She asked quietly. The fingerprints are a preliminary match, Sheriff Miller confirmed. We've requested dental records for confirmation. Her sister is driving up from Charlotte, should arrive tomorrow. Hope touched the photograph, tracing the woman's features. Sarah Jensen, she repeated, testing the name. It felt no more familiar than Hope had a week ago. There's more, the sheriff continued. Search teams recovered this near where the trail washed out during the storm. He placed a plastic evidence bag on the bed containing a torn, mud-stained missing persons flyer. The paper was water-damaged, but still legible. It showed a woman who looked startlingly like both Hope and the photograph of Sarah Jensen. The heading read, Missing Eleanor Ellie Green, with a date from nearly a year earlier. Beneath was text describing Ellie's disappearance during a flash flood, and a plea to contact Piney Creek Sheriff's Department with information. I don't understand, Hope whispered, looking between the two images. These women could be twins. That's what we're trying to figure out, Sheriff Miller said. The flyer was in Sarah Jensen's backpack. Seems she may have been searching for Ellie when she had her accident. Hope's head throbbed as she tried to process this information. Are you saying I might be this Sarah person who was looking for Ellie? But why would I be searching for someone who looks exactly like me? That's the question, isn't it? The sheriff retrieved a small recorder from his pocket. I'd like to try something with your permission. Sometimes familiar names or phrases can trigger memory responses, even in amnesia cases. Hope nodded her consent, trying to ignore the growing pressure in her temples. Sheriff Miller pressed record. I'm going to say some names and places. Just tell me if anything feels familiar. He paused. Sarah Jensen. Hope shook her head. Charlotte. North Carolina, nothing. Westfield Elementary School, a flicker of something. Children's laughter. The smell of chalk. Then gone. Eleanor Green. Ellie. The pressure in Hope's head intensified. River Pines foster home. A sudden sharp pain lanced through her skull. Hope gasped, pressing her palm against her forehead. Are you all right? Sheriff Miller asked, concerned. Just a headache, she managed. That last one, River Pines, it felt significant somehow. The sheriff made a note. One more. Twin Oaks Adoption Agency. The pain surged again, accompanied by a disjointed flash, a sterile office, papers being signed, a profound sense of loss. I think we should stop, Hope whispered, the pain becoming overwhelming. Sheriff Miller nodded, switching off the recorder. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause you distress. As the sheriff gathered the documents, a nurse entered with medication and a glass of water. Hope accepted both gratefully, hoping for relief from the pounding in her head. There's one other thing, Sheriff Miller said as he prepared to leave. We'd like Noah to meet Sarah's sister when she arrives. If you are Sarah Jensen, her sister might trigger more substantial memories. Hope nodded, though the thought of Noah meeting someone who might claim her away from him filled her with unease. What will happen to Noah if I'm not Ellie? The sheriff's expression softened. One step at a time. Let's first determine who you are. After he left, Hope closed her eyes against the harsh hospital lighting, the pain medication slowly taking effect. The two faces from the photographs merged in her mind, Sarah and Ellie, so similar yet subtly different, like reflections in rippling water. Behind her eyelids, disjointed images flickered, two small girls holding hands, a woman in a formal uniform signing papers, a locket being split in two. When the nurse returned to check on her, she found Hope in troubled sleep, tears streaming from beneath her closed eyelids, the torn missing persons flyer clutched tightly in her hand. Thunder cracked over the mountains, echoing across valleys and ridges. Rain pounded against the hospital windows as if demanding entry. Hope sat rigid in her bed, heart racing with each lightning flash, a visceral fear she couldn't explain. The storm had arrived suddenly, the afternoon sky darkening to premature night. Hospital staff hurried to close windows and comfort nervous patients. But for Hope, the storm triggered something deeper than ordinary fear. It was raining like this, she whispered to the empty room. The night she disappeared, the thought emerged unprompted, startling her with its clarity. Whose disappearance? Ellie's? Her own? The uncertainty was maddening. A gentle knock preceded a nurse entering with evening medication. "Nasty storm rolling through," she commented, noting Hope's distress. "Are you all right?" "I don't like storms," Hope managed, accepting the pills with a trembling hand. After the nurse left, Hope found sleep impossible. Each thunderclap sent adrenaline coursing through her body. Images flashed behind her closed eyelids, rushing water, mud-slicked stones, a desperate scramble up a crumbling embankment. The hospital phone rang, startling her from half-formed memories. She answered to hear Sheriff Miller's concerned voice. "Sorry to call so late. Just checking if you're okay with the storm." "How did you know?" Hope asked. "Ellie was terrified of thunderstorms," he explained. "Ever since a close call with lightning as a teenager," and he hesitated. "Noah called the station worried about you. Said his mama couldn't sleep during storms." Hope's throat tightened. "Is he okay?" "Managing. Martha's with him." The sheriff paused. "There's something else. The road to the hospital is flooded. Sarah's sister won't make it until tomorrow at the earliest." After they hung up, Hope found herself drawn to the window. Lightning illuminated the parking lot below in stark white flashes, rain creating rivers across asphalt. In the brief illumination, she noticed a familiar vehicle, Dr. Peterson's blue Volvo, parked haphazardly as if he'd arrived in a hurry. Moments later, the doctor himself appeared at her door, his normally neat appearance disheveled, rain dripping from his coat. "You're here late," Hope observed. "Emergency call," he explained, removing his fogged glasses. "But I wanted to check on you." Storms were always difficult for Ellie. Hope gestured to the visitor's chair. "Everyone keeps saying that. Yet I feel like I should be out there, not hiding in here." Dr. Peterson settled into the chair with a weary sigh. "That's interesting." Ellie feared storms but never avoided them. Said she needed to face what frightened her. Lightning flashed again, followed immediately by explosive thunder. Hope flinched. "I brought something that might help," the doctor said, reaching into his bag. "Found it when looking through some old patient files." He handed her a small leather-bound book, its cover worn and water-stained. On the front, barely visible, was the faded impression of initials, E.G. Ellie's journal. Hope asked, accepting it carefully. She kept several, Dr. Peterson explained. "This one was from just before her disappearance. She left it with me for safekeeping one day, said she was documenting something important. Never came back for it." Hope opened the journal with trembling fingers. The handwriting matched what she'd seen in Noah's memory box, flowing script that filled each page with careful observations and deeply personal reflections. She read aloud from a random entry. "April 3rd, the dreams are getting worse. Always the same. Water rising, Noah calling for me, and a shadow following behind us. Dr. P says it's anxiety, but it feels like premonition. Something's coming. I can sense it like animals before an earthquake." Dr. Peterson nodded grimly. She'd been increasingly anxious those last weeks. Hope turned pages, scanning entries. Many detailed ordinary life, Noah's progress with reading, plants gathered for medicines, weather patterns. Others contained troubling references to being found and moving again. Then a passage from 2 weeks before Ellie's disappearance caught her attention. May 12th. Mail today. A letter from River Pines with information I've waited years to find. My search might finally be over. After all this time, could she really have been so close? I've spent half my life looking, and now I'm afraid of what I'll find. Noah deserves to know his family history, but at what cost to our safety? Hope's headache returned with sudden intensity. River Pines, she repeated. Sheriff Miller mentioned that place. A foster home. Yes, Dr. Peterson confirmed. Though Ellie never discussed her childhood much. Said it was complicated. Hope continued reading, stopping at an entry dated just 3 days before the storm. May 20th. I've made contact. The resemblance is uncanny, like looking in a mirror across time. She wants to meet, says she has questions only I can answer. I've arranged everything at the hideaway cabin. Noah's excited about an adventure, though he doesn't understand its significance. If all goes well, our family might finally be whole. If not, I've prepared for that too. The journal fell from Hope's suddenly numb fingers. There was another cabin, she whispered. A hideaway where Ellie was meeting someone. I never knew of another property, Dr. Peterson said, frowning. But Noah might, Hope realized. He mentioned they sometimes stayed elsewhere in the woods. Lightning illuminated the room once more, and in that flash, Hope saw something that had been hidden in shadow, a small, weather-beaten journal that had fallen from between the pages of the larger one. It had been concealed inside Ellie's journal like a secret within a secret. Dr. Peterson noticed it too. I didn't put that there. Hope picked up the smaller journal with a strange sense of foreboding. Unlike Ellie's careful script, this contained hurried, almost frantic writing. The first page bore a simple heading. The truth about Sarah and Eleanor Green. Below was a photograph. 2 identical little girls, perhaps 5 years old, holding hands before an institutional-looking building. On the back, written in childish script, Sarah and Ellie. River Pines, 1993. Hope stared at the identical faces, her head pounding with each thunderclap. Twins. The girls in the photo were twins. Separated somehow, searching for each other across decades. I think, she said slowly. I know why Sarah Jensen and Ellie Green look so much alike. Outside, the storm reached its crescendo, rain lashing against the windows with renewed fury, as if nature itself was responding to secrets finally surfacing. After years buried in darkness, morning arrived with the clarity that follows storms, air washed clean, sunlight intense against dampened earth. Sheriff Miller assembled a search team at the ravine where Noah had found Hope, his expression grim with determination. We're looking for anything that might connect to either Ellie Green or Sarah Jensen, he instructed the volunteers. Focus on areas downriver from the landslide. The storm may have uncovered evidence previously hidden. Noah had insisted on joining them despite Martha Wilson's protests. The boy's knowledge of the forest proved invaluable as he guided them through washed-out trails and hidden deer paths. Mama and I tracked all through here, he explained, pointing out landmarks only a local would recognize. There's a fork in the river just beyond that ridge, where things often get caught in the rocks. Sheriff Miller nodded, impressed by the child's composure. Lead the way, son. The ravine looked different in daylight, less threatening but no less treacherous. Recent rainfall had caused another minor landslide, exposing layers of earth and rock previously hidden. One of the deputies pointed to freshly disturbed ground. Looks like the water cut a new channel through here, he observed. Redirected the whole flow. Noah scrambled down a relatively gentle slope, his small frame moving with the confident agility of someone born to the mountains. The adults followed more cautiously, testing footholds in the slick mud. This is where I found her, Noah called, indicating a flat area now cleared of the debris that had partially buried Hope. The compass was right here. Sheriff Miller examined the area, noting how the land funneled rainwater from higher elevations. Perfect storm trap, he muttered. Water rushes down, bringing everything with it, then pools here before continuing to the river. The team spread out, searching methodically. An hour passed with nothing significant discovered beyond the occasional hiking equipment, a broken trekking pole, tattered shreds of what might have been a tent, a crushed water bottle. Then Noah's excited voice rang out from near the riverbank. "Sheriff, I found something!" The boy stood knee-deep in the river, pointing to a tangle of branches and debris caught against a fallen tree that spanned the narrow waterway. Lodged in this natural dam was a battered backpack, its once bright blue fabric now mud-stained and torn. Sheriff Miller waded into the cold water, carefully extracting the pack from the debris. The back panel bore a faded name tag, S. Jensen, with a Charlotte phone number. "Good work, Noah," he said, carrying his find to the shore. The contents had largely survived, thanks to waterproof internal compartments, a soaked trail map, energy bars, a first aid kit, and a plastic container that had protected its contents from water damage. Inside this container were documents, Sarah Jensen's identification, permits for backcountry hiking, and a folder labeled Ellie. Sheriff Miller examined these papers with growing interest. She was definitely looking for Ellie. As newspaper clippings about her arrival in Piney Creek 7 years ago, notes about possible sightings, even printed emails from adoption agencies. Noah peered at the documents. Why would she be looking for Mama? Before the sheriff could formulate an age-appropriate response, one of the deputies called from further downstream. "Sheriff, you need to see this." The tone of his voice brought everyone running. The deputy stood near a newly exposed section of riverbank, pointing to something half buried in the mud. Another backpack, this one green with Forest Service patches. "That's Mama's ranger pack," Noah cried, rushing forward. Sheriff Miller caught the boy before he could reach it, holding him gently but firmly. "Let us check it first, Noah." Two deputies carefully excavated the area around the pack, revealing that it was trapped beneath a large tree root. The pack itself was heavily damaged, but the contents remained partially intact within waterproof compartments similar to Sarah's bag. "Standard Forest Service issue," one deputy commented. Ellie would have had this with her on duty. Inside, they found typical ranger equipment, a damaged radio, compass, first aid supplies, and a waterproof pouch containing personal items, a small photo of Noah, a folded map with markings, and a sealed plastic bag containing a handwritten letter addressed simply, "For Sarah." "If anything happens," Sheriff Miller read the letter silently, his weathered face growing increasingly solemn. Finally he looked up, meeting Noah's anxious gaze. "Noah," he said gently, "I think your mother was meeting someone important the night of the storm, someone she'd been looking for her whole life." "The lady from the hospital?" Noah asked. "Hope?" The sheriff nodded. "We believe her real name is Sarah Jensen, and according to this letter, she's your mother's twin sister." "Your aunt?" Noah's face registered confusion, then disbelief. But they look exactly the same. How could I have an aunt nobody told me about?" "It seems your mother and her sister were separated as very young children," Sheriff Miller explained, choosing his words carefully. "They've been trying to find each other for many years. So Hope isn't Mama," Noah said slowly, the implications settling like a weight. "She's my aunt. It appears that way." The boy's eyes filled with tears, but he blinked them back with determined control. "Then where's my real Mama? If her pack is here, she has to be somewhere nearby." The search team exchanged uneasy glances. Sheriff Miller placed a gentle hand on Noah's shoulder. "That's what we're going to find out, son. This is the first real lead we've had in almost a year." As the team expanded their search area, Noah sat alone on a boulder, clutching his mother's damaged ranger pack. His small fingers traced the Forest Service patches, the familiar worn straps, the places where his mother's hands had gripped it countless times. Inside a side pocket, he discovered something overlooked in the initial examination, a small waterproof camera, the kind used to document wildlife or trail conditions. The power button still functioned, the screen lighting up to reveal that it contained images. "Sheriff," Noah called, his voice urgent. "Mama's camera still works." The team gathered around as Noah navigated through the saved images. Most were standard ranger documentation, trail washouts, bear markings on trees, cloud formations. Then came a series taken the day before Ellie disappeared. They showed a clearing with a small, weathered cabin, partially hidden by pines. Another photo captured a campfire with 2 mugs beside it. Then came a selfie of Ellie, smiling nervously at the camera, the cabin visible in the background. The final image made everyone fall silent. It showed a crude map drawn in dirt, rocks marking key locations. With an X labeled meeting point and another marked emergency shelter. "I know this place," Noah whispered, staring at the cabin in the photo. "We stayed there once. Mama called it our secret spot." Sheriff Miller studied the image intently. "Can you find it again?" Noah nodded solemnly. "I promised Mama I'd never tell anyone about it, but I think she'd want me to show you now." The sheriff radioed the discovery to the hospital, requesting that Dr. Peterson share the findings with Hope, with Sarah, as the team prepared to follow Noah to the secret cabin. The boy carefully zipped his mother's ranger pack, his expression shifting from grief to determination. If Mama and Aunt Sarah were meeting there, he said with the simple logic of a child, then that's where we'll find our answers. Hope, or rather Sarah, sat by the hospital window, watching sunlight dry the remnants of last night's storm. Dr. Peterson had just left after sharing the search team's discoveries. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the photocopy of Ellie's letter, reading her twins' words for what felt like both the 1st and 100th time. "Sarah, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I've waited so long to find you that it seems cruel fate might separate us again. There's so much to explain about why we were divided, why I've lived under assumed names, why I've kept Noah isolated from the world. The short answer, protection. The long answer is in the documents hidden at the cabin. Trust no one except Sheriff Miller and Dr. Peterson. They don't know everything, but they've kept our secrets without realizing it. Most importantly, if anything happens to me, please care for Noah. He's the best of both of us. Your curiosity and my caution, your warmth and my resilience. He doesn't know about you yet. I wanted us to tell him together. With love across time, your sister, Ellie." A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. A nurse entered, followed by a woman whose appearance made Sarah's heart stutter. Though dressed in stylish city clothes rather than mountain practical, she could have been Sarah's reflection. The same dark hair, the same eyes, the same small crescent birthmark behind the right ear that Dr. Peterson had confirmed on Sarah earlier that morning. "Rebecca Jensen," the woman introduced herself, voice quavering. "I'm your sister." Sarah stared in confusion. "I thought Ellie was my twin." Rebecca shook her head, approaching cautiously. "Ellie was your identical twin. I'm your younger sister, 3 years behind you and Eleanor. We're triplets?" Sarah asked, struggling to process this new complexity. "No," Rebecca replied, sitting gently on the edge of the bed. "Just sisters. When our parents died, the state split us up. You and Ellie were adopted together because you were twins. I went to a different family. By the time I was old enough to search for you both, Eleanor had already disappeared with her son." Sarah closed her eyes, fragments of memory suddenly connecting. "The Jensen family. They adopted me, but not Ellie?" Rebecca nodded. "Something went wrong with the paperwork. At the last minute, the Jensens could only take one of you. You were separated at age 5. It destroyed you both. You became withdrawn, selective mute for almost a year. Eleanor apparently became a behavior problem, bounced through foster homes, but we found each other." Sarah asked, desperately trying to piece together her past. "You never stopped looking," Rebecca confirmed. "When I found you 10 years ago, you were already deep into searching for your twin. You'd become a teacher, but spent every school break following leads." Dr. Peterson, who had remained quietly by the door, stepped forward. "That explains the school schedule on Sarah's hiking permit. She was using her summer break to search the mountains." Rebecca pulled a worn leather wallet from her purse, carefully extracting a folded document. "I brought this. Thought it might help your memory." Sarah unfolded the paper with trembling fingers. It was a birth certificate, yellowed and official, with the name Sarah Elizabeth Green, and a birth date 32 years earlier. Beside it was a notation. Twin A, identical twin birth. Twin B, Eleanor Marie Green. Our original surname was Green, Rebecca explained. When Eleanor disappeared from the system at 18, she reclaimed it. You kept Jensen from your adoptive family. Sarah traced the document, something profound shifting in her mind. We were born as Green sisters, she murmured. And Ellie went back to that name while I remained a Jensen. The missing link we needed, Dr. Peterson said. This confirms everything in Ellie's letter. Rebecca reached for Sarah's hand. When you didn't check in from your hiking trip, I knew something was wrong. You're meticulous about schedules, always have been. And with your history of searching for Eleanor in remote places. I was so close, Sarah whispered. After all those years, I finally found her. And tragically, just as you found each other, you were both injured in separate accidents during the same storm, Dr. Peterson observed. You with amnesia and Ellie? He left the sentence unfinished, the implication hanging heavily in the air. Sheriff Miller radioed, he continued after a moment. They found Sarah's backpack and Ellie's ranger pack. Noah is leading them to a cabin where Ellie and Sarah were apparently meeting in secret. Noah, Sarah repeated, the name triggering a surge of emotion. My nephew, he's an extraordinary child, Dr. Peterson said. Resilient, resourceful. Very much his mother's son. Rebecca squeezed Sarah's hand. The doctors say you can be discharged tomorrow if you feel strong enough. I'd like to take you to this cabin they're searching. Perhaps being there will help recover more memories. Sarah nodded, determination replacing confusion. I need to see it, and I need to see Noah. He knows now, Dr. Peterson said gently, that you're his aunt, not his mother. Sheriff Miller explained after they found the letter. A pang of guilt shot through Sarah. He must be devastated. Children are remarkably adaptable, Dr. Peterson reassured her, especially when one miracle, finding you, might lead to answers about his mother. As Rebecca helped Sarah prepare for discharge, Dr. Peterson excused himself to make arrangements. Left alone with her newly discovered younger sister, Sarah studied the familiar yet unfamiliar face. Tell me about us, she requested. Who was I before all this? Rebecca smiled sadly. You were the determined one, the problem solver. Eleanor was the dreamer, the free spirit. You became a teacher because you wanted stability, something neither of you had growing up. You're brilliant with children, patient in a way you never are with adults. And Eleanor, what was she like as an adult? I only know from your descriptions, Rebecca admitted. You found traces of her over the years. A community college enrollment in Wyoming, a job application in Colorado, a hunting license in Tennessee. She kept moving, using different names. You said it was like tracking a ghost who didn't want to be found. Yet I kept looking, Sarah mused. For 27 years, Rebecca confirmed. You never gave up. Sarah fingered the birth certificate again, studying the official seal and signatures that documented the beginning of lives that had taken such divergent paths. I need to continue that search, she said firmly. For Ellie and for Noah, we will, Rebecca promised. Together, outside the hospital window, clouds parted completely, revealing the Blue Ridge. Mountains in the distance, the same peaks under which two sisters had finally found and lost each other in a single storm-ravaged night. Noah moved with unexpected sureness through dense undergrowth, leading the search party along a route invisible to untrained eyes. Sheriff Miller and 3 deputies followed, occasionally marking trees to ensure they could find their way back. How much farther? The sheriff asked as they paused to rest. Not far, Noah replied, his small face set with determination. There's a creek crossing, then up the ridge. Mama said it's hidden so well because it needs to be. The sheriff exchanged concerned glances with his deputies. Ellie's apparent need for a hidden retreat raised new questions about her past. They continued for another 20 minutes until Noah stopped abruptly, pointing to a barely visible deer trail branching from their path. This way, but we go quiet from here. Mama's rule. The trail descended into a narrow ravine where a small creek gurgled over smooth stones. Noah crossed with practiced ease, then led them up a steep incline. At the crest, he dropped to his stomach and motioned for the others to do the same. "You have to look carefully," he whispered, crawling forward through thick ferns. "It's hidden on purpose." The men followed his example, crawling until Noah stopped at the edge of a small clearing. There, nestled against a rock face and almost completely obscured by surrounding pines, stood a small log cabin. Without Ellie's photographs and Noah's guidance, they would never have found it. Sheriff Miller studied the approach through binoculars. "No signs of recent activity. Let's proceed cautiously." The cabin was smaller than Ellie's main residence, its construction rougher but solid. A stone chimney rose against one wall, the small porch sagging slightly with age. The door was secured with a padlock that Noah approached without hesitation. "I know the code," he said, reaching for the combination lock. "Mama's birthday backwards." Inside, dust motes danced in beams of sunlight, filtering through small windows. The space was simple, a main room with basic furniture, a tiny kitchen area, and a curtained alcove, presumably serving as a bedroom. What caught everyone's attention, however, was the wall opposite the door. "My God!" one of the deputies whispered. The entire surface was covered with maps, photographs, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes, all connected by red strings pinned between related items. It resembled a detective's investigation board, spanning decades and multiple states. Sheriff Miller approached slowly, taking in the meticulously organized information. "She was tracking someone," he observed. "Or being tracked." Noah moved to a small desk beneath the window, opening drawers with familiar ease. "This is where Mama keeps the important papers," he explained, extracting a leather portfolio bound with a simple cord. "May I?" the sheriff asked, holding out his hand. Noah hesitated, protective of his mother's privacy even now. "She said these were only for emergencies. I think this qualifies, son." Reluctantly, Noah surrendered the portfolio. Sheriff Miller carefully untied the cord and spread the contents on the desk. Birth certificates, adoption records, legal documents, and what appeared to be caseworker reports from various social services departments. "Eleanor and Sarah Green," he read aloud, "separated during adoption proceedings despite recommendation to keep identical twins together." He flipped through more papers, his expression growing increasingly troubled. "Multiple foster placements for Eleanor. Behavioral issues. Attempted reunification denied." Noah watched with wide eyes. "Is that about Mama and Aunt Sarah?" "Yes," the sheriff confirmed, selecting documents carefully. "It seems they were separated as very young children. Your mother tried repeatedly to find her sister." He continued reading, occasionally sharing relevant details. "Eleanor legally changed her name back to Green at 18. Enrolled in community college in Wyoming, then disappears from official records for several years." "She was hiding," Noah said simply. "She told me sometimes people need to disappear to stay safe." Sheriff Miller looked up sharply. "Did she say who she was hiding from?" Noah shook his head. "Just that some people wouldn't understand our life and might try to take me away." One of the deputies called from the wall of connected information. "Sheriff, you should see this." He'd found a series of newspaper articles about a domestic violence case in Tennessee. The victim's name was Janet Williams, presumably another of Ellie's aliases, who had testified against a man named Robert Thorne. The final article reported Thorne's conviction and 15-year prison sentence, dated 7 years ago, the deputy noted. Right before Ellie appeared in Piney Creek with 3-year-old Noah. 15-year sentence, Sheriff Miller mused. With good behavior, he could be out by now. Noah had wandered to the curtained alcove, pulling back the fabric to reveal not a bedroom as expected, but a small child's sleeping area. A narrow cot was neatly made with a familiar quilt. A shelf held books and small toys, and a child-sized backpack hung on a wall peg. "This is my spot," he explained, "for when we needed to hide." The sheriff joined him, examining the carefully prepared space. "Did you stay here often?" "Sometimes," Noah replied, "when Mama said we needed to practice being invisible." While the deputies continued documenting the wall of information, Sheriff Miller noticed something beneath the child's cot, a loose floorboard, slightly raised compared to those surrounding it. He knelt, gently prying up the board to reveal a hidden compartment. Inside lay a hand-drawn map on faded graph paper, its edges worn from frequent handling. Unlike standard topographical maps, this showed carefully measured distances between 3 locations marked with simple symbols. A house representing Noah's main cabin, a square presumably indicating their current location, and a third mark, a small X with the notation "Last Resort." "What's this third location, Noah?" Sheriff Miller asked, showing him the map. The boy studied it, recognition dawning. "That's Eagle Rock. Mama said if we ever got separated, I should go there and wait in the cave behind the waterfall." Sheriff Miller carefully refolded the map. "I think we should check this location next." As they prepared to leave, Noah made one last circuit of the cabin, his small hands touching familiar objects as if saying goodbye. At the desk, he paused, opening a drawer the adults had overlooked. From it, he withdrew a small leather-bound journal with a handwritten label, "For Noah, when you're ready to know everything." "Mama made this for me," he said quietly. "She said someday I'd need to understand our story, but I wasn't old enough yet." Sheriff Miller approached carefully. "That could be very important, Noah. Would you be willing to share it with us? It might help find your mother." Noah clutched the journal protectively for a moment, then held it out with reluctant trust. "Only if Aunt Sarah reads it too. Mama would want her to know." The sheriff accepted the journal with appropriate solemnity. "I promise." As they secured the cabin and prepared for the hike to Eagle Rock, Noah took one last look at the hidden refuge that represented both his mother's fear and her careful planning, a place designed to keep him safe in a world she clearly believed held dangers beyond normal parental concerns. "She knew," he said suddenly, startling the adults with his certainty. "She knew something was coming. That's why she was meeting Aunt Sarah here. She was getting ready for something bad." Sheriff Miller rested a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder, unable to dispute his assessment of the evidence surrounding them. "If that's true, Noah, then the best thing we can do for your mother is figure out exactly what she was preparing for." Noah nodded solemnly, squaring his small shoulders beneath the weight of emerging truths. "Then we need to go to Eagle Rock. That's where she'd go if she was in real trouble." Sarah sat in Sheriff Miller's office, Rebecca beside her, as they carefully read through Ellie's journal. The leather-bound book Noah had discovered contained not just entries, but documents tucked between pages, court filings, police reports, and most disturbing, a restraining order issued 5 years earlier against Robert Thorne. "I never told Sarah the full truth," one entry read. "How could I explain that the man who fathered my child had become a monster? Noah believes his father died before he was born, a kind fiction to protect him from a cruel reality." Dr. Peterson, who had driven Sarah and Rebecca from the hospital, leaned against the wall, his expression grave. "I treated Ellie for injuries when she first arrived in Piney Creek. She claimed a hiking accident, but I suspected domestic violence. She refused to discuss it. The timeline fits," Sheriff Miller noted. "According to these records, she testified against Thorne 7 years ago in Tennessee. He received 15 years for aggravated assault, but with good behavior," Rebecca began. "He could be out now," Sarah finished, a chill settling over her despite the officer's warmth. Sheriff Miller nodded grimly. "We've contacted Tennessee authorities. Thorne was released 4 months ago. His parole officer lost track of him 3 weeks later." Sarah turned pages in the journal, stopping at a recent entry. "I've found Sarah after all these years. The sister I was torn from. The piece of myself I've always missed. We've been corresponding secretly. She's coming to meet me at the hideaway cabin. Part of me fears bringing her into this danger, but if Thorne ever finds us, Noah will need her protection. Blood calls to blood. The twin bond will guide her to care for him as I would." "She knew he might come for her," Sarah whispered, "and she was preparing for that possibility," Sheriff Miller confirmed. "The hidden cabin, the emergency supplies, the secret meeting with you, all precautions in case he found her." Rebecca squeezed Sarah's hand. "The storm complicated everything. You were injured trying to reach her and she left the sentence unfinished. A deputy entered with a stack of photographs from the hidden cabin. Full documentation of the evidence wall, sir. Sheriff Miller spread the images across his desk. They showed Ellie's meticulous tracking of Robert Thorne over years, prison visitor logs, correspondence with his parole officer, news clippings about his case. She monitored him like a researcher studying a dangerous predator, Dr. Peterson observed. Or prey watching a hunter, Sarah countered. She lived in constant vigilance. One particular document caught her attention, a psychiatric evaluation of Thorne conducted during his incarceration. The report described obsessive fixation on former partner, rejection of parental responsibility coupled with ownership claims, and high risk of violence upon release. She was right to hide, Sarah said, a memory surfacing with sudden clarity. I remember now. In her letters, she wrote that he'd threatened to take Noah from her, said if he couldn't have her, he'd take the only thing she loved. Sheriff Miller's radio crackled with an incoming transmission from the search team at Eagle Rock. Sheriff, we've found something. Signs of recent activity in the cave. Someone's been here within the past week. Everyone in the room tensed. Sheriff Miller responded, any indication who? Food wrappers, empty water bottles? Could be hikers. But there's something else, a small campsite that looks deliberately concealed and a vantage point overlooking the main cabin. Like someone was watching it. Sheriff Miller's expression darkened. Secure the site. We're heading your way. He turned to the others. I need to join the search team. Dr. Peterson, can you take Sarah and Rebecca to the station in Ashton? They'll be safer there until we know what we're dealing with. What about Noah? Sarah asked. He's with my deputies. They'll bring him to Ashton as well. As they prepared to leave, Deputy Lawson entered with a fax from Tennessee. Thorne's prison records, sir. You'll want to see this. The sheriff scanned the document, his jaw tightening. He had Ellie's picture in his cell. Guards confiscated it during a routine search, but his cellmate reported he'd talk about finding his woman and his boy once he got out. Dr. Peterson gathered the journals and documents. We should go. Storms building again in the mountain roads. His words were cut short by the station door bursting open. Noah ran in, followed by an apologetic deputy. Sorry, sir. He insisted on coming straight here when we reached town. Noah rushed to Sarah, wrapping his arms around her waist with surprising strength. You're better, he said, looking up with relief evident in his eyes. I am, Sarah confirmed, returning his embrace awkwardly, still adjusting to her identity as his aunt. Noah turned to Sheriff Miller. Did you tell her about Eagle Rock? About the cave? We were just discussing it, the sheriff replied. There are signs someone's been staying there, watching the cabin. Noah nodded solemnly. It's him, isn't it? The bad man Mama was afraid of. The adults exchanged glances, unsure how much the boy had overheard or intuited. We don't know yet, Sheriff Miller answered honestly. But we're going to find out. Noah reached into his pocket, extracting a folded paper. I found this at Eagle Rock. The deputies didn't see it because it was in our special hiding spot, the hollow behind the third rock that looks like a turtle. He unfolded the paper carefully, revealing a page torn from a spiral notebook. The handwriting was unmistakably Ellie's, though hastier than her journal entries. Noah, if you find this, go to Martha Wilson. Tell no one else where you are. S knows what to do. Trust her. She is your blood too. Remember the stories of the twin stars. We always find each other. Always. Love, Mama. The note was dated just 2 days after the storm that had supposedly claimed her life. Sarah's hand trembled as she touched the paper. She was alive after the storm, she whispered, and she left this for Noah to find. But why wouldn't she come back to him? Rebecca asked, bewildered. Sheriff Miller studied the note, his expression grim. Because she was leading a predator away from her cub. He looked at Noah with gentle eyes. Your mother was protecting you the only way she could, by making herself the target instead. Noah's small face hardened with determination beyond his years. Then we need to help her. Now. Outside, thunder rumbled across the mountains, an ominous echo of the storm that had set these events in motion nearly a year before. But this time, Sarah understood the danger gathering on the horizon, and she was determined not to lose her twin again. Rain fell in sheets as three. Vehicles navigated the winding mountain. Rode toward Eagle Rock. Sheriff Miller led in his Bronco, followed by two deputy cruisers carrying additional officers, Dr. Peterson, and despite strenuous objections from the adults, Sarah and Noah. He knows these mountains better than any of us, Sheriff Miller had reluctantly admitted, and she might respond to her sister when she wouldn't to law enforcement. Sarah sat in the back seat with Noah, her cast propped awkwardly across the seat. The boy stared intently through rain-streaked windows, alert for landmarks only he would recognize. There, he pointed suddenly. That lightning-struck pine means we're close. The convoy pulled off the main road onto a barely visible fire access path. After half a mile, even this rudimentary track disappeared. We walk from here, Noah announced with certainty. Mama says vehicles scare the wildlife and alert strangers. Sheriff Miller distributed rain gear and radios to everyone. Stay with your assigned deputy, he instructed. Sarah, you and Noah remain with Dr. Peterson and Deputy Collins at the rendezvous point until we clear the area. They moved through dense forest, rain drumming on the canopy above. Noah led them confidently despite the difficult conditions, occasionally pausing to check subtle trail markers, a stack of stones, a bent sapling, a distinctive root. Pattern. Mama taught me to read the forest, he explained quietly to Sarah. She said nature always provides signposts if you know how to see them. The similarity to words, Sarah herself had apparently spoken in her teaching career, struck her forcefully. We're both educators, she murmured, just with different classrooms. Noah glanced up at her, a flash of recognition crossing his face. That's what Mama said about you in her journal. That you taught children in buildings while she taught me in the forest, but you both loved helping people learn. After 30 minutes of difficult hiking, they reached a rocky clearing. Eagle Rock loomed before them, a massive granite outcropping resembling a bird with outstretched wings. Water cascaded down one side, feeding the stream that eventually passed near Noah's cabin miles below. The cave is behind the waterfall, Noah explained. You can't see it from here. Sheriff Miller signaled his deputies to spread out. Collins takes Sarah, Noah, and the doctor to the shelter point we discussed. The rest of you approach from opposite sides. Radio silence unless absolutely necessary. Dr. Peterson guided them to a protected overhang as the sheriff and his team disappeared into the mist. Surrounding Eagle Rock, Sarah's leg ached from the difficult terrain, but she ignored the pain, focusing instead on Noah's tense vigilance. She's here, he whispered. Though whether statement or hope, Sarah couldn't tell. They waited in silence, broken only by rainfall and distant thunder. 10 minutes stretched to 20, then 30. Noah grew increasingly restless, his small body practically vibrating with contained energy. Something's wrong, he finally said. They should have found her by now. Dr. Peterson tried to reassure him. The cave system might be extensive. They're being thorough. But Noah shook his head firmly. No, Mama would have left signs, like she did with the note. He turned to Sarah with urgent eyes. She said in her message that you would know what to do, that your blood too. What did she mean? Sarah struggled to access memories still partially shrouded by amnesia. I'm not sure. Something about twin stars? The note mentioned that. The twin stars! Noah's eyes widened. From her bedtime stories, Castor and Pollux, the twin stars that always find each other. She said they were special because even when they look separate, they're really part of the same system. Something clicked in Sarah's mind. A childhood memory of identical twin girls, creating a secret language, a private symbol system only they understood. We had codes, she said slowly. Ellie and I, when we were little, ways to communicate that no one else understood. Deputy Collins' radio crackled to life with Sheriff Miller's voice. Cave is clear. Signs of recent occupation, but no current presence. Proceeding to secondary locations. Noah's face fell, but Sarah barely heard the transmission. She was scanning the surrounding forest with new awareness, looking not for conventional signs, but for something only a twin would recognize. "The ribbon," she whispered suddenly. "What?" Dr. Peterson leaned closer. "Red ribbon," Sarah said more confidently. "Ellie always wore a red ribbon in her hair as a child. It was the only way people could tell us apart." She pointed to a nearby pine where a small strip of faded red fabric fluttered from a branch, nearly invisible against the dark bark. There! Noah was already moving before Deputy Collins could stop him. He reached the tree and carefully removed the weather-beaten ribbon. Attached was a small metal object, a key. "It's for the Forest Service supply cabin," Noah identified immediately. "The one by Three Forks Creek. Mama had access because of her ranger work." Deputy Collins radioed this information to Sheriff Miller, while Dr. Peterson examined the ribbon. "This hasn't been here long," he observed. "A few days at most, or the rain would have deteriorated it further." "She's leaving a trail," Sarah realized, "but not one everyone can follow, just us." The Three Forks Creek cabin was 8 miles north, a difficult journey under normal conditions, nearly impossible in the current weather. Sheriff Miller's voice confirmed this assessment over the radio, ordering everyone to return to vehicles and regroup. As they carefully retraced their steps through the increasingly treacherous forest, Noah stumbled over an exposed root. Sarah caught him before he fell, her hand closing over his shoulder. The boy winced slightly. "Are you hurt?" she asked with immediate concern. "Just sore," he admitted. "I hit my shoulder on something at Eagle Rock." Dr. Peterson insisted on examining him once they reached shelter under a large pine. He carefully pulled back Noah's rain jacket to reveal a small tear in his shirt, and, beneath it, a peculiar mark on his shoulder, not an injury but a deliberate pattern pressed into his skin. "It looks like—" Sarah began peering closer. "A leaf," Noah finished, recognition dawning. "From Mama's maple leaf mug." Dr. Peterson's experienced fingers confirmed it wasn't an injury but a temporary impression. "Someone pressed this against your skin recently," he said. "Did anyone touch you at Eagle Rock?" Noah's eyes widened. "I felt something when I was looking at the Turtle Rock, like someone brushed past me, but nobody was there." Sarah's heart raced with sudden certainty. "She was there," she whispered. "Ellie was at Eagle Rock, close enough to touch Noah without being seen." Deputy Collins looked skeptical. "The sheriff's team cleared the entire area." "She wouldn't let them find her," Noah said with absolute confidence, "but she wanted us to know she was watching." The maple leaf impression, a symbol only meaningful to those who knew about the special mug, was precisely the kind of signal twins might devise. As they resumed their journey toward the vehicles, Sarah felt a growing certainty that her sister was alive nearby and leading them along a path only family could follow. When they finally reached the convoy, Sheriff Miller was conferring with his deputies beside the vehicles. He looked up as they approached, his expression grim beneath his rain-drenched hat. "We found more evidence at Eagle Rock," he announced. "Recent campfire ashes containing burned papers. We recovered partial fragments." He held up a plastic evidence bag containing charred paper scraps. "One appears to be a prison release document with Thorne's name still visible." "He's been tracking her," Sarah realized aloud. Sheriff Miller nodded gravely. "And based on these tracks, he's no more than 12 hours ahead of us." Noah stepped forward, holding out the faded red ribbon and key. "We need to go to Three Forks Creek," he said with quiet determination. "Mama's showing us the way." Dusk settled over the mountains as the convoy reached Three Forks Creek. The Forest Service cabin stood in a small clearing, its weathered exterior blending with surrounding pines. Sheriff Miller ordered his deputies to secure the perimeter, while he approached the structure with Sarah, Noah, and Dr. Peterson. The key from the red ribbon fit perfectly. Inside, the cabin was spartanly furnished. A desk, filing cabinet, radio equipment, and basic supplies for rangers on extended patrols. There was no sign of recent occupation. "Nothing," Sheriff Miller said, disappointment evident in his voice. But Noah moved through the space with focused attention, checking corners and cabinets with methodical care. "Mama wouldn't make it obvious," he explained. "She'd leave something only we would recognize." Sarah followed his example, examining the cabin through the lens of twin logic rather than conventional investigation. Her eyes fell on the desk calendar, each day X'd out meticulously until yesterday. Today's date was circled in red. "She knew we'd come today," Sarah said softly. Noah had discovered something too, a map pinned to the bulletin board, different from the standard Forest Service charts on adjacent walls. It showed a detailed topography of the surrounding 20 miles, with 3 locations marked: Eagle Rock, now crossed out, Three Forks Cabin, also crossed out, and a third location labeled simply Sanctuary. "This is where she's leading us," Noah said with absolute certainty. Sheriff Miller studied the map. "That's Clearwater Falls. There's nothing there but wilderness." "That's not true," Dr. Peterson interjected unexpectedly. "The old sanatorium was built near those falls before the war. It's been abandoned for decades." "Sanatorium?" Sarah questioned. "For tuberculosis patients," Dr. Peterson explained. "Remote, clean air, natural springs. The perfect place to quarantine the sick away from population centers." "And the perfect place to disappear," Sheriff Miller added thoughtfully. "Isolated, self-sufficient, defensible." While they discussed this, Noah had moved to the radio equipment. With surprising familiarity, he powered up the system and adjusted dials to a specific frequency. Static filled the room, but the boy waited patiently, watching the clock on the wall. At precisely 7:30, the static cleared for 10 seconds. 3 short tones sounded, followed by 3 long, then 3 short again. "SOS," Sarah identified immediately. "No," Noah corrected, his face lighting with recognition. "EGN, Mama's initials, Eleanor Green. It's her Forest Service call sign." He adjusted another dial, picked up the microphone, and transmitted a response. 3 short tones, 3 long, 3 short. Everyone held their breath, waiting. A full minute passed in silence. Then, crackling through residual static, came a woman's voice, faint but unmistakable. "Noah? Is that you?" The boy's hands trembled as he pressed the transmit button. "Mama, we found your messages. We're at the ranger cabin with Sheriff Miller and—" He hesitated, looking at Sarah, and Aunt Sarah. A long pause followed, before Ellie's voice returned. "Sarah's with you?" "She's all right." "I'm here, Ellie." Sarah spoke into the microphone Noah held up for her. "I've been looking for you for so long." "I know." Ellie's voice cracked with emotion. "I found your research in your backpack after the storm. They've been trying to lead him away from Noah, away from you both." "Thorne," Sheriff Miller took the microphone. "Ellie, this is James Miller. We know about Robert Thorne. Let us help you." "No." The fear in her voice was palpable. "You don't understand. He's not alone. He found people who helped him track me, people who don't care about restraining orders or custody agreements. He wants Noah, and he'll eliminate anyone who stands in his way. Where are you?" Sheriff Miller pressed. A pause, then, "The old sanatorium at Clearwater Falls. But don't come. He's watching the access road. That's what he wants, for Noah to be brought to him." Noah grabbed the microphone. "Mama, I'm not afraid. We can help you. Listen carefully," Ellie's voice softened. "There's a service tunnel the TB patients used for fresh air treatments. It opens near the falls, hidden behind the large boulder shaped like a bear. Only someone small could fit through now." Sheriff Miller and Dr. Peterson exchanged concerned glances, both recognizing what Ellie was suggesting. "No way," the sheriff stated firmly. "We're not sending a child into that situation." But Noah's face had set with the same determination they'd seen throughout this ordeal. "I can find her," he said simply. "I can bring her back." Before anyone could respond, the radio crackled again. "He's coming," Ellie whispered urgently. I have to move. Sarah, remember what Mother told us before they separated us? About stars that seem apart but are always connected? Sarah closed her eyes, reaching for the memory. Binary stars, she said suddenly. Always orbiting the same center, even when they appear separate. Yes, relief colored Ellie's voice. If anything happens, look in our special place. The answers are there, everything Noah will need. Static interrupted momentarily. I have to go. If I don't, she paused. Sarah, you'll be the mother he deserves. It's why I searched for you. Blood to blood, twin to twin. The transmission ended abruptly. Noah stared at the silent radio, his small face a complex mixture of hope and fear. Sheriff Miller was already organizing his deputies, arranging a tactical approach to the sanatorium while ensuring Noah and Sarah would remain safely behind. But Sarah recognized the look in her nephew's eyes, the same determination she'd seen in photographs of Ellie, the same resolve she felt growing within herself. As night settled fully over the mountains, Sarah made her decision. While Sheriff Miller and his team prepared their approach from the main road, she quietly gathered Noah and Dr. Peterson. There's another way, she said softly. One Ellie prepared specifically for us. Dr. Peterson looked uncertain. The service tunnel? It's too dangerous. More dangerous than leaving her alone with Thorn. Sarah countered. She's my twin. I can find her in ways the sheriff's team can't. She looked at Noah. We can find her together. Noah nodded solemnly. Mama left signs only we would understand. Sheriff Miller would never approve such a plan. But as his attention focused on coordinating the official response, Sarah, Noah, and Dr. Peterson slipped away from the cabin into the gathering darkness, following a path that existed not on any official map, but in the shared blood and history of a family finally reuniting after decades of separation. As they made their way through the dense forest toward Clearwater Falls, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced since awakening with amnesia in Noah's cabin: absolute certainty. Whatever dangers lay ahead, she was exactly where she needed to be, following the invisible thread that had always connected her to her twin, guided by the child who belonged to them both in different but equally important ways.